Well, of course, we all have heavy hearts today, and it's great loss to Dallas. Many of us, it's great personal loss. But thank goodness, Bill Decker's interest for his staff, which is an excellent staff, and his interest in the county that he loves so, he has trained a man to take his place. And we are grateful to Bill for this.
Sheriff Jones?
I think, as I have said before, that people have not yet really felt the impact of this loss. I know of no finer humanitarian with a great love for all of the people.
The turnkey project is a very nice project. The school situation will improve, the transportation, and maybe there will be shopping centers one day. At present, the statement that the OEO man made about turnkey may be true, but where have OEO been in the last 2 years with the housing problem?
Then are you saying turnkey is better than no program at all?
Definite. And the OEO man said that he had 6 alternatives. Well, our CAP agency would have really loved to get those 6 alternatives 2 years ago, and probably we would needed a turnkey.
Well, in the estimation of the people of the groups you represent, is money being misappropriated?
I couldn't say that. I don't have the books of of no agency, so I couldn't make that statement.
Jim, I wasn't there myself, but from information received through undercover work by the Carrollton Police Department, and with the cooperative efforts from our department as well as many other state and federal agencies, a raid was conducted last night, and understand there were several arrests and good cases were made.
What prompted this raid last night?
This is something that, as I understand, had just been discovered, uncovered by the Carrollton Police Department, and requested our assistance in order to carry it out.
What assistance did the Sheriff's Department play in this?
We helped call in some other agencies, both federal and state, and outline the plan.
Well, from your understanding, what was the layout at the location?
It was setting out in a field surrounded by a fence, I think the furthest fence being approximately 30 feet from the building itself, it almost bordering immediately to its rear by the river, and required a great deal of walking and to get there at nighttime to get set for it.
How can you sneak up on a building in the middle of nowhere in the middle of the night without being heard?
Maybe there's too much noise inside.
Well, it was shortly after 9 o'clock when the boys who had been playing in our backyard came running in to say that Mrs. Travis next door was screaming for help. At that time, I ran out of our house to their house right next door and found Gordon Travis lying in the flower bed out in front of his house, and Mrs. Travis, not hysterical at all, very calmly trying to explain what had happened.
What did happen?
As she described it, she and her husband were in their bedroom, relaxing, watching television, and she heard the front door open and close, believing it to be her son Jim, who had been out playing with our boys. looking up, she saw two men standing in the bedroom, and from that point on, they turned into the fight inside the house, followed by the shooting. Apparently they were there, she said, demanded money, wanted to know where the safe was, and were not interested in anything other than cash, apparently.
Did Mr. Travis struggle with them for a weapon?
Apparently so. As I came into the house, the blood was in the corridor and in the front hallway of the home, so apparently he was struggling with them, and then struggled and traveled outside the front door before he collapsed.
Jim, the functions of the Speaker of America are primarily, number one, to sell America to all Americans. Speakers for America recognize the fact that the greatest tragedy that we have, the greatest destructive things that we are now seeing, is drug abuse.
Now, what exactly does the Speakers of America plan to accomplish during your two-day conference here in Dallas?
Well, this is the first time in the history of the nation that concerned citizens, the decision makers of America, have met to interest other citizens, to point out to them the job that we must do. And Jim, if I may add just one point, this is almost our last chance.
Well, I've been treating heroin addicts with methadone, which is a blockade treatment for heroin addicts. That means it blockades the craving of addicts for heroin.
What is the net effect of methadone? Does it have a habit-forming quality also?
Yes, methadone is also addictive, but it is not so hard to get rid of the habit. Everybody who takes methadone on this program will be temporarily addicted to methadone.
What was it initially for? Is that the primary use for it?
Methadone was captured from the Germans in the Second World War, and it was developed by the Germans as a substitute for morphine, which was not available to the Germans, and it was for pain.
Does methadone also have the accompanying high that you get from heroin or something of that nature?
Well, contrary to some opinions, evidence that the hearing in Austin from the U.S. Public Health Hospital, I don't believe that methadone produces highs. If it does, it is irregularly produced.
So it's not as dangerous in that regard as heroin?
Well, heroin is and methadone both are pain medications. Of course, there's a euphoria with them, but this is what people are talking about when they mention highs.
The committee and Speaker Mutcher will lay out the program that we have to these business executives and ask their help in loaning us specialists and loan us people from their organizations that have expertise in these fields.
Are you prepared to name some of the executives from Dallas that will be named?
At this time, I'm not. Monday, when we meet, we have left up to the Speaker. This is his committee, and we've left up to him to coordinate in getting the business people there. Now, I anticipate that Monday we'll see 60 to 80 business people from all over the state, and particularly coming from our 4 largest cities. And we'll know Monday who these are going to be. This is simply an initial meeting. It's open to anyone who is interested in this and who has the facilities within their business to aid us.
Well, Dallas was one of the 22 finalists. Might say that there were 126 entrants into the Municipal League All-American City Contest, and then the National Municipal League narrows it down to 22, and it's a real honor to be one of those 22.
Well, it's being reported in some quarters that Dallas is actually one of the 11.
I have no way of releasing that, or even knowing. I should say that Look Magazine will make that release in time, and my understanding that'll come about March.
I believe that the answer has to come from a total commitment to children in the state of Texas, both on the part of the citizens and the legislature. I think we've got to catch this thing in the beginning stages. We've got to, in some way, draw together the different state agencies that have something to do with children. We've got the Texas Education Agency. We've got the Mental Health, Mental Retardation Agency. We've got the State Health Department. We have the Texas Youth Commission. All of these people have something to do with children in the state of Texas, but they do not cooperate.
Mr. Chairman, what have you learned from the hearing that you've conducted here today?
That the plight of the emotionally disturbed child, the child that might have problems with the law, need help, and more than the committee anticipated.
How severe do you think the problem is statewide?
I think from testimony today, what has been done in Tarrant County for these children, that it's coming from my hometown, Harris County, that I know we have a problem down there, and due to the larger number of persons in the county, the problem is probably magnified quite a bit. There's also surely problems across the state in rural and urban areas, and the committee, in its findings, in its report to the 62nd session of the legislature, will outline measures that we hope will help to alleviate this problem in this area.
This was a weapon that was recovered. and from the laboratory test we were able to determine that this was the weapon that had fired the projectile.
Anything of that nature has never entered our mind. I can guarantee you that the Dallas police officers do not believe in any kind of a strike or a sick out or a blue flu or whatever you want to call it, that we will go ahead and do our job with what we have the best we can.
At this time in our economic history, Mr. Parks, when wage and price controls are being argued in many quarters, do you maybe feel that your request is inflationary?
No, we feel like that everything that Chief Dyson has recommended is needed, and actually we feel like it's a few years late in coming. We need these things right now.
There's no direct bearing between the two issues of the capital improvement program and the wage negotiations of the city employees.
Mr. Campbell, what would be your stand if the city employees decided to suddenly get sick? Would you support their efforts?
I'll support any worthy efforts, any just efforts made by any union man.
The matter of city employees' wages have no bearing on a bond election or capital improvements. Capital improvement program money and bond funds are used for capital improvements, which it says. Salaries or salary increases come from the general operating budget.
Mr. Mayor, do you feel that you'll be able to work something out with the city employees without a work stoppage?
Yes, we're in the process of negotiating with this particular union at the present time, and I think that we will have a package to offer them that will be acceptable.
The committee was formed in order to establish a forum for responsible citizens to express their views and their feelings about the war.
When?
The committee was originally conceived in June of 1970.
Was this committee formed in any way in response to the Fred Agnich Win the War Committee?
In June of 1970?
I'm just asking, was it in any way
formed
as a response?
It wasn't formed as a response to anything. It was just a spontaneous thing that developed because a group of people were interested in forming it.
Who are these people?
These people are all business executives, professional people, college faculty.
How many would you say you have in your group?
I would say about 175.
Anyone you would like to name?
No.
It's very competitive already, as far as we can see. We have a similar development, our latest development in Pretoria, South Africa. We also have a plant very similar to the Lake Tahoe reclamation plant, and there the cost of reclaiming secondary effluents is of the order 20 cents per 1,000 gallons, which is roughly, in terms of your cents and gallons, more or less the same thing. And where industries pay about 18 cents per 1,000 gallons there for normal water supply, you can see that the break-even point is very close already.
Well, I think you better direct the question to what the UAW is asking for than the UAW and not to me. Our response is that we will bargain, as we always have, collectively and within the framework of what is doable for American motors. And that's the position that we'll take, and I think it's a very reasonable one. It's one we've taken before, and it's one we'll take again.
If some prolonged strike should develop, would this affect your estimate of automobile sales for this year and next year as well?
Oh, I think this is right. I think that if there was a prolonged strike, and hopefully there's not going to be one, but if there were a prolonged strike, it would materially affect the estimates.
What effect would it have on the economy at this time when it's trying to get back on its feet again?
I think it would be a setback for it.
During combat, we are withdrawing American troops in accordance with national policy, and at the same time assisting the Vietnamese in taking over where our troops are withdrawing. It makes it necessary that first we do maintain support of combat operations. We have the logistic problems involved in withdrawing our troops and their equipment, and at the same time improving the Vietnamese logistic system so that they can carry on.
What do you propose to do about it? Do you feel that any sort of strident measures are necessary now?
I don't feel so at this time. I think this is the action will be taken by the police department and other officials to apprehend the criminals, and courts will do justice. And I don't feel like that this thing is likely to reoccur.
Do you feel the need for locked fare boxes as they've had to go to in Dallas?
No, our experience has been very few hold-ups, and I don't think that the expense involved is called for at this time.
With regard to this particular crime, robbery apparently was the motive. What do you think about that problem?
Well, it's hard for me to understand, even if robbery were the motive, for such a senseless murder to be committed. The money had already been taken, so I can't understand why robbery even had any connection with the situation. Apparently they just wanted to shoot someone.
the bus driver, was driving his bus last night. There was two boys, apparently young men or late teenagers, on the bus, and the apparent motive was robbery. They took his billfold and took the coin changer. They did miss some money that he had hid on the bus, though. And they shot him twice with a small caliber gun. And that is basically the bare facts. Now,
what are you doing now about it?
We have started in checking with all the people who saw anything out in that area. And there is several that saw the boys run from the bus and can describe them basically to us as their height, the weight, and so on and so forth. Now, we have gone to checking with informants, and we've come up with some information on some. We've run two on the polygraph today. We're checking ex-employees of the bus company that might have something against the driver. And we've talked to, I would estimate 10, 12 people today on this thing, and it's just
been interpreted by many courts to be a function that may be at the exercise of the county auditor's discretion, and it is no more than a mere imposition of a ministerial duty. And being such a duty, I think it's well settled in Texas that a writ of mandamus may not lie to compel the performance of such an act.
Do you think that this particular case will help to clarify the state law regarding contracts made with public officials?
I hope so. Actually, the cases in some ways are conflicting now, and I hope it will make it more clear.
Situation, not court decisions.
Right now, do you feel that white people now are afraid of busing?
I think that the whites are afraid of busing blacks into their neighborhood, because they certainly aren't afraid of busing, because they initially installed the busing system to bus us to the one school that we had to go to. Because I am only 29 years old, and I have been bused, and I was bused from the 1st grade to the 12th grade. And there was no issue there. And the whites were paying for the busing.
Anytime you phase into production from development, under the best of circumstances, you're going to have problems. It's ideal, of course, to go through development, to have a piece of hardware that you can actually test and see that it works, or fly, if you will, and see that it works, before you now release to production. And that's what we mean by this. But even when you release these items to production, after you've tested it, and you've known that it works, you're still going to have some problems as you now phase into production. You're going to have benchmarks that we have to find ourselves meeting as we go into the phase into production.
I'd like you to outline to the folks anything you feel that our attitude or our philosophy this year is going to be different from last, and what you think is going to be the new Cowboys in 1970.
Well, in all seriousness, Lance, I think you're going to see a big change. In fact, I've moved into guard, as everybody probably knows, but our running game is going to be a lot more powerful. Calvin's running tremendously. Craig's throwing the ball well, and so is Roger. And I know that you all have been working extremely hard on your pass routes. They've simplified your pass offense some, so I think you're going to see a different type of Cowboy club.
I think so, too. I might outline a couple of things in detail that we're doing different this year. Of course, we seem to be saying this every year, but all you can do when you've met with the disappointments that we have as a team is just to pick yourself up off the floor and just try a little bit harder. And I think this year we have done several things, as Ralph outlined, a couple of that are going to make us a lot different ball club, I think. Well, number one, we have simplified our offense down to where we feel we will get the execution that we've lacked sometimes in critical situations last year that have hurt our offense. And I think this is going to be defined in several ways. Number one, we have cut down our assignments in our running game, and also our pass patterns have been simplified down where we only have around 10 or 11 basic routes. I think this is going to be something that's going to add to our execution. In addition to this, I think that we'll find that we're going to have a little more leadership among the ball players this year than we had last year. We're going to have more dedication than we had last year, even though we tried last year harder than the year before that. The main thing that we want this to lead up to is that when we get into a big playoff game or any big game during the season is that we're going to win. And we're going to have a positive attitude about ourselves this year. And so to all you fans, I know we were fooling around and enjoying ourselves, but in all seriousness, this is about the only fooling around we intend to do during camp, and I think you can look for a new Cowboy team this year.
More and more citizens of Fort Worth seem to be becoming concerned over situations they say are prevalent here in city parks, especially between the hours of midnight and 7 a.m. Park and Recreation Board Chairman Charles Ringler called attention to the fact that as far as he was concerned, there were large numbers of youngsters sleeping in the park overnight. Many of these young people, according to Ringler, are homeless transients from other cities. This is the way Ringler put it to the board this morning.
I know I'm fed up, and I'm sure every member on this board is fed up with the conditions that exist at our Trinity Park shelter and also in other areas that have not been mentioned in the past. We've been a concerned board. The City Council is aware of the action that we have tried to take. The Police Department has been aware of the action that we've tried to take. We've had a little progress, but not enough.
Ringler and board members were obviously upset over certain reports of widespread use of narcotics and unruly behavior. Some residents have been offended by such things as they say as nude bathing in duck ponds and water fountains. The board passed a resolution calling for an emergency ordinance this next Monday for the Fort Worth City Council, which would close over 7,300 acres of city parks from the hours of midnight to 7 a.m. We asked some of the young people what they thought about the curfew. Do you at any time sleep here in the park?
I do all the time.
You mean every night you sleep here?
Every night I'm not run off.
So this is just kind of your home then, huh?
Kinda.
What do you think about the possibility of having a curfew here in the park?
Well, the curfew, I have anything against it. I have nothing against it, but there's so many youths down here that has no place to go. There are people that are traveling through here that perhaps want to set over. What are you going to do, run them out too?
Art Sinclair, Channel 8 News on the Move, Fort Worth.
I think unless each of us remove this color from our eyes and start treating everyone as human beings, the situation will never be solved by any court decision. It won't be solved by any busing. It's going to have to be solved by people who are interested enough to realize that these things that they are doing to black people nowadays are just inhuman. They are just inhuman. They violate the Constitution, although we realize the Constitution wasn't written for blacks. In this day, blacks were property, not people. But something's going to have to be done.
Primarily, it was upon a statute that states that there cannot be a transfer of surplus funds during a fiscal year that would increase the total budget of the county. I think the record in this case reflects that it would increase the budget. Secondly, the same statute also declares that the county auditor must certify that there are sufficient funds on hand to pay any obligations, such as, in this case, a pay wage increase.
Mr. Thompson, what is your reaction to the ruling this morning?
Well, I'm downhearted, really, and I'm disappointed. I'm sure all the employees are going to be disappointed, too.
Do you feel that you'll appeal this immediately?
We will have to discuss this. We will have an executive board meeting, and then we'll have a union board meeting with the members, and we will decide then whether we will appeal the case with the advice from our attorneys.
And the probability of appeal will be based on what the entire membership of the union thinks?
With the advice from our attorneys.
Judge, I'd like to make a motion. The motion is that we appoint Clarence Jones, Sheriff of Dallas County, for the interim period, effective date 10 a.m., September the 1st, 1970.
Second motion. Discussion.
Judge, I have previously made remarks, and those remarks I repeated, rather I recall to your attention at this time. These will explain my reasons for abstaining.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Abstain.
I vote aye. Carried and so ordered.